afternoon, and welcome back to this week's episode of Since I Was Young, a podcast dedicated to all things Heart of Midlothian. This week, we're going to be splitting the podcast into two parts, as we have done previously. I'm going to rattle off my thoughts on the recent victory in Perth against St.Johnstone, where we came away with a hard-fought 2-1 victory. And then for the second half of this week's episode, Ewan will give his thoughts on the upcoming ties this week when we face St.Mirren on Wednesday evening, followed by an Edinburgh derby to finish off what could be a very, very important week in terms of our race for the top six. So that's going to be the format of your podcast today. Before we get jumped into everything, obviously rattling through the formalities, folks, all of our social media links can be found in the box below, so please do head down there, follow us on all the socials if you want to keep up to date with our uploads and things like that. If you just want to have any questions for us, feel free to fire them in there as well. Also, of course, while you're down there, please do consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. Any support that we receive is always massively, massively appreciated, as you all know. But yes, so without further ado, obviously, let's get stuck in. St Johnstone away. It's a tie that we don't tend to do too badly in against St Johnstone. I wouldn't call them a bogey side. I think we've got a very, very decent record against them. So in the build up to the game, obviously, Ewan and I spoke last week about it, and my favourite expression was as confident as I will allow myself to be. And I think that kind of summed it up for me. The game itself, the conditions were horrendous. Obviously, the pitch had a pitch inspection prior to kick-off in the morning. Had a pitch inspection because there was heavy rain and winds through the night. So the game was in a little bit of doubt, but thankfully the pitch survived in some capacity, and a game was able to be put on. In terms of our lineup, Critchley went with the same 11 that started against Rangers, and I don't blame him for that. You know, we spoke about the Rangers game, and it was a game that again was missed opportunities, and a game that we on another day win quite comfortably. So there were obviously some selection decisions that Neil Critchley would have to make for that game. I think the right back question is always one that's going to be posed every time Adam Forrester's name's on a team sheet. You know, there is that ability of thinking, well, Gerald Taylor is here. You know, he's a player that we should be trying to look at because it's a loan with a possibility of a permanent. And I've spoken about that before. He needs an opportunity to show that he can earn a deal with us. So we'll see what happens with that. But that being said, I don't mind Adam Forrester. I think he's definitely a player that's a bit rough around the edges, but certainly one that I think we can develop. And I think people are very quick to almost write off a young player without trying to be harsh about it. I think he's a player that will he be a long-term option for us at Hearts? I don't think so. But whilst he's here, he's perfectly usable. So I don't worry too much about that. We continued with the midfield minus Cammy Devlin. He was touted to return for St Johnstone, but I wonder if that was more of a teaser rather than anything else. His concussion protocol is still being served, so he's obviously not fit enough to be selected from the start of the game. Didn't feature on the bench either. Not a big surprise, but I wonder when we'll see him back. Hopefully in the not too distant future. But certainly the midfield in the setup that we played it with Spittle, Benny, and George Grant seemed to work relatively well. But the game itself, as I say, didn't start particularly well. Both teams trying to just figure out the conditions more than anything else. I think it was a case of the heavy wind and rain was, caused the game to kind of be a bit stop-start, a bit end-to-end, kind of direct balls into the boxes and just long punts. And it didn't really lend itself to any form of actual football to be played. We did have a couple of decent chances in the first 20 minutes, though. We had George Grant and Blair Spittle, both skying chances over the bar that were both worked down the James Penrice left-hand side. So there were some early signs that if we could get in, we had opportunities to score. And then obviously, sorry, pardon me, we had probably one of the best chances, as I said, was Grant's shot that he had to, he just placed it. He sort of tipped it over, the goalkeeper tipped it around the post. That was in after about half an hour, made the keeper do some work. So that was positive. And then obviously we had the goal. Elton Kabangu, again, adding another to his impressive tally that he's got so far. I think a player that we haven't spoken about a lot over the last few weeks, or maybe haven't given him enough credit over the last few weeks, is Benny. And I think Benny is, in the last few weeks, obviously Cammy Devlin's taken a lot of the headlines with his improved performances, but Benny's been fantastic as well. So he deserves a shout for his sorry, pardon me, his his role in the goal. He intercepted the ball, worked it out to James Penrice, and then there was a little bit of kind of interplay. Lauren Shanklin ends up getting it, squares it across the box. I don't know whether he's going for a shot or not, but it looked like it initially to me. But Kabangu was at the back post to sort of slide in and put it over the line. There was some discussion if it was offside. It was a very, very tight call, but I think he was just on. But knowing what our officials are like in this country, it took an awfully long time, and I can understand. It was definitely a tight decision, but I think we got the right outcome. Obviously, it was a goal. So yeah, it continues that impressive form of Kabangu. Obviously, he had a bit of an off game against Rangers. He had a lot of chances, and on another day, he's probably got a hat trick on his in his he's probably got a hat trick to his name. But yeah, it just wasn't to be on that day. But thankfully, he was in the right place at the right time to slot the ball away for the opener. Then when halftime came around, I felt like being ahead is positive. It was important to be ahead, especially the way the game was going and the conditions. Like I say, played a massive, massive part in the game. So being in front was always a positive. Um, but yeah, obviously 1-0 is always a bit of a dodgy scoreline, and St Johnstone, I don't think they played bad football. I actually think they were actually not too bad compared to some other sides that we've seen play against us this season. I thought St Johnstone actually did all right considering they're bottom of the table. They tried to work the ball quite nicely, so you can see there's clearly a plan under their new manager there, but it's just whether or not that plan has the time to be put out there. But yeah, at halftime, happy with the win, happy with the lead, but felt a second goal was essential to get the ball over the line and get the game won. Then we came out in the second half and St Johnstone equalised. Adam Forrester gets caught out. The cross comes in. There's not a lot Gordon can do about it. A close range finish. Frustrating, irritating, annoying, but it is what it is. But I have to then say the reaction to St Johnstone going or equalising was brilliant from us. I thought we played really well and I thought we responded incredibly well. I think something that's been levelled at Hearts players a lot this season, certainly in the first half of the season, was that mentality and that reactionary of if we go behind, we just I'm not going to say down tools. It's not maybe the right phrasing, but when we used to go behind, it was like the game was done. There wasn't that belief that we'd come back. Whereas I think we see that now under the Neil Critchley system and under the Neil Critchley identity. There's a bit more of a fight. There's a bit more of a sort of belief in the team that they're able to get back into these games. And obviously, before our goal, we had a fantastic save from the best goalkeeper in the country. Craig Gordon, the ball again gets brought into the box, crossed into the box, and I can't remember the St Johnstone player, but Gordon, it's a point blank reaction save. He gets an arm up, sort of just palms it into the air, and James Penrice is there to head it over the bar. It can't be understated how important that save was. But it's funny because I've seen all the reaction to it, and people saying, "Oh, it's save of the season, it's brilliant, it's this, it's that," and I'm sort of looking at it going, in a strange way, it's kind of a save I would expect Craig Gordon to make, just because he's just that good. So yeah, obviously it was a fantastic save, and it obviously in the context of the game, it made a huge difference because only 71 seconds later, while the St Johnstone fans were still singing at the fact they've just created a massive opportunity, we created one of our own. Michael Steinvender, who impressed me all day. I thought he was fantastic. Certainly had a few little moments, but overall was just rock solid and very surprisingly good with the ball at his feet. I wasn't expecting that, but it was obviously that played a part in the opener, the winner rather, the winning goal. Steinvender has the ball at his feet and he just comes forward with it and he finds Shankland in a pocket of space. And then Shankland turns and obviously plays in Kabangu. And Kabangu lets it roll across him and then just puts it in the net. With composure and confidence of a player that has made a huge impact since his arrival. It's 7 goals in 7 games now. The first player to do that for Hearts in the top flight since a certain Rudy Scatchell in 2005-2006 season. Gennaro Zifowic did it, however, it was in the Championship. That I did not research that myself. It was something that I saw on Twitter at Heart Stats was the person responsible for that. So thank you for that one. It just, yeah, it's. I think Kabangu And this is where I'm going to sort of write my love letter to Elton Cabangu. I think what he's done in the short time of being here is massive. I think you can see Lawrence Shankland is rejuvenated, because he's kind of not got that pressure on his shoulders as much as he did at the beginning of the season when he was literally the only striker that we had. James Wilson has obviously contributed as well, and he's come into the team. And I thought against St Johnstone, I thought he did okay and not spectacular, but did a job. But Kabangu has come in with a confidence and a belief in his own ability and a want to be important. And I've said that for a few weeks now. Every time he talks about being important. He talks about scoring goals. He talks about wanting to get more. And even after the Rangers game, he apparently apologised to Neil Critchley and his teammates for being so wasteful in front of goal. And that, then to have that mentality to bounce back against St Johnstone and be in those positions to score those goals is massive. He's a big, big player for us, and his impact, as I say, should not be understated. Um, Again, on Kabangu, I have heard that I think it was Brian McLaughlin that said it. I was scrolling on Twitter not too long ago, and he basically suggested that it was an obligation to buy rather than an option that Hearts have on Kabangu. So that could obviously mean that if, as long as Kabangu wants to stay and the club are happy for him to do so, and the clubs can agree if they haven't already, then Kabangu could be at Hearts next season, and I think that would be massive. Obviously, the future of our captain Lauren Shankland is still a little bit up in the air, but we'll have more chats about that as we wind down the season. But yeah, that kind of wraps up the St Johnstone game. To be honest, I don't think it was a particularly brilliant game to watch, but it didn't have to be. All we had to do was get the 3 points and get home, and we managed that. Like I said at the start of this episode, it's a very, very important week for Hearts, and Ewan will talk about the upcoming tie against St Mirren as well as the Edinburgh derby at the weekend. But if we can secure 9 points this week, it'll go a massive, massive way to getting us into that top six and beyond, hopefully. But again, time will tell on that. We'll see what happens. The most important thing to come out of the weekend, obviously, was we won. The Saturday fixtures, all the results kind of went against us, so it added extra pressure to the game in Perth, and the players turned up. And you can't use the conditions as an excuse. And Neil Critchley said after the game, you've just got to adapt and you've got to get used to it and you've got to play in it. Both teams have to feature in it, basically. It doesn't give an advantage to one or the other. Both teams have to play in the same conditions. And I thought that considered, it wasn't a terrible game, but it wasn't a great game to watch. But Scottish football, it was a typical nitty gritty kind of all hands on sort of game. But yeah, very happy to get the 3 points and as we say, to progress to the next fixture on Wednesday evening against St Mirren. I'm just looking at my notes before if there's anything else that I wanted to touch on before I hand it across to you. Um, yeah, the Lauren Shankland and Kabangu partnership, we've touched on that. They both look like they're bringing the best out of each other, and that is vital, especially in this run of fixtures that we have. Benny was outstanding. I've already mentioned that. There were some conversations about perhaps Sander Khartoum starting the game against St Johnstone, but I think I want to see him play on a better surface than that, and I think that's kind of maybe the thought process as far as that's concerned. But yeah, time will tell, and these guys will get their chances to come in and play and feature in whatever capacity they can. Top six race is getting interesting. We're certainly very much in it. The win against St Johnstone's lifted us up to 7th position, just behind St Mirren, who we obviously host on Wednesday evening. A win would take us above them. I'm sure Ewan will touch on that in his preview piece. But yeah, it's a vital week for Hearts, and it was a very, very good start. A Craig Gordon wonder save, 2 goals from our informed striker. What more can you want? Maybe a bit of sunshine would have been nice. But yeah, I'll leave it there for now. I'm going to hand you across to Ewan to give his thoughts on the upcoming ties against St Mirren and Hibs.
Thank you very much, Alan. Yes, it was a fantastic win for Hearts. Just at the weekend pass there, a massive win against St Johnstone. At the bottom of the table, their trouble seemed to worsen as the season goes on, but not a great concern for us, if I'm honest. Yeah, it was a massive win, a much very needed 3 points to push us up a bit more in the D League table, which sits us in 7th place. And as we move on into this week as we record on a Monday afternoon. A massive week for Heart Midlothian as well. Just before I get into the games that are taking place this week, I would like to take a tiny bit of time just to talk about the Lawrence Shankland situation. As we are all probably aware, if true, of course, apparently talks over his contract, which is up at the end of the season, will be renegotiated from our end. I think it was said last week that Neil Critchley would very much like to keep him, as we all would. Obviously, it's not been the greatest season for Shankland in terms of a goal scoring sort of season, if you will. But I think with the introduction of Elton the Cabangu, kind of taking that role as the main man, if you will, in terms of goals. He's kind of taken that shadow number nine, if you will, like, to kind of sit back, create the chances for, like, both Cabangu and Wilson as well. And he seems to have done relatively well. Like, that shows at the weekend with getting both assists for the two goals that we scored. It's, in my view, it's almost a free role for Shankland as well. Throughout the St.Johnstone game, you kind of saw him drifting in and out of that central role that he now has, like, to roam all over the park as well, to create those chances, recycle the ball as well, to let Cabangu like sort of through, and James Wilson as well, to try and score those chances, with a few chances of his own to try and score. So, I think the partnership of himself, Shankland, Cabangu, and Wilson seems to be going somewhere and seems to be working relatively well so far. But, concerning Shankland signing on, even if it's for another season, I think it would be a win-win for the both the parties. If I'm honest, just going back to how he's not performed as well as he would have liked to, comparing to the last two seasons. There hasn't been, as far as we as fans are aware, there hasn't been much interest in in Shankland. Obviously, I think if our Rangers or a championship side were to come in for him, obviously, when it comes to the wages aspects, it's something that we obviously can't ignore, which, on the higher earners, like, we won't be able to compete with, especially if, we aren't going to be offering the same amount of wages in that respect, like, just to, on how he's performed this season. So I would imagine that our offer will be probably a bit lower, but at the same time, I think it, some aspects as well to take into account where we finish in the table this season. If we'll be in Europe next season as well, I can imagine that'll play a massive factor. But, yeah, I think when it comes down to it, I think it would be a win-win for both Shankland and the club, as well as the fans as well. I would love to see him stay for at least another season. But again, with the other factors, like, with the Jamestown as well, Cabangu starting to really shine up front as well. So, to put it this way, if he was to stay, amazing. I would love that. If he did decide to go somewhere else, that's absolutely fine. He's been a massive servant to this club, especially when it's only taken 3 seasons as well. Granted, this season hasn't been his best, but with the amount of goals he's scored, the records he's was broken as well, you can't fault him if he like, if his head's turned elsewhere, if he wants to get a big like one more big the payday before he starts to think about, like, retirement for the future as well. I that's absolutely fine. So yeah, we would love to hear all your thoughts on that in terms of if you would love to see Shanklin stay or not too arsed if he goes as well. I'm sure we'll put a wee questionnaire or the poll as well onto our X page as well if you want to check that out. But back to what is, again, as we say every week, a massive week for us in terms of trying to make the top six and still put in a challenge as well for European places for next season as well. So we'll start with St. Mirren, who we face on Wednesday. As we record this and put this out, it'll be tomorrow at 7:45. Yeah, St Mirren are a bit of a weird club. They seem to be going a bit up and down in terms of their consistency for the last 2 months. Obviously, they'll still be flying high off of that win at Ibrox as well against Rangers. Like obviously, the Rangers haven't been at their best, but you can't take that away from them, especially going to Ibrox as well, where a lot of teams tend to struggle there. So it'll be an interesting one to see where we are in terms of facing St. Ed, the Mirren as well. Obviously, with the win that we've had as well, um, um, last week at St.Johnstone as well. Obviously, that will to give us a bit of a boost as well. At being at home under the lights as well at Tynecastle. Hopefully, we can get behind the squad as well to give them a boost. Yeah, I think we have more than enough to take back to take home 3 points as well, especially when St Mirren are quite in close proximity to us as well in terms of league the table. It's really tight at this moment in time. I think we are sitting 8 points adrift of third place as well, which is not an impossible task by any means. So if we can get a win this Wednesday, I think it'll make things really interesting going into arguably the biggest game of our season so far, which is away to Hibs at Easter Road. I think, in my opinion, we have to concede that we are the underdogs in this context as we speak. Hibs, you have to give them the credit. 13 games unbeaten as well. David Gray seems to have really found a tune out of them at this moment in time. Obviously, with them beating Celtic as well at home at the weekend, that will obviously give them a massive boost as well. So with both the teams this week that we are playing, both beating the Old Firm at the weekend, they'll be really striving to keep that run the going as well, especially Hibs. And with being at home, you can see why they'll probably be the favourites to take home all 3 points as well. But nonetheless, with the system that we've been working with throughout the last few weeks, with the diamond shape as well, and with three attacking strikers as well being on the forefront, I think we do have every chance to take away 6 points throughout this week. I think a big factor as well that could be a massive factor in terms of if we can put more in of the challenge as well into these games will be the Cammy Devlin if he is back fit, as I believe he's still a bit the kind of was it the weary ever since he got that concussion, and when he's been training, he's still kind of feeling the after effects of that. So obviously, I know that they'll be wanting to monitor him and take his time by getting back into games as well. But with the Benny as well, with the work that he's put in extra as well, obviously he's had to cover more ground as well on these match days. But I think he's done really well. So even if Cammy Devlin isn't in, for both games, I still think we'll have enough in the tank to hopefully take all 3 points. But, as everybody knows, with any Edinburgh derby. All form goes out out the window as such. But with the Hearts and St.Mirren game on Wednesday, I'd like to think it will be maybe a 2-0 win for Hearts, even maybe 2-1. But I think if as long as we get the 3 points against the Mirren, that's all I'm really concerned about. Hibs deservedly are like where they are at the right now. Like you can't fault them, but if we can take away 6 points from this week, then it's going to make a really spicy ending to before the split. I think if we get away with 6 points, I think that really puts us into the driving seat to challenge um, trying to get into a European spot as well. But we would love to hear all your thoughts as well going into these games as well. Do you think we can make a hat trick of games in terms of wins this week? What do you feel about the Lawrence Shankland situation and your feelings going in to the Edinburgh Derby this Sunday at Easter Road? So thank you very much for watching as well, guys. We do apologise that we've not virtually been in the same room, Alan and myself, but hopefully things will be back to normal next week as well. And also thank you to Alan, as I mentioned as well, for his part on the St.Johnstone game. And as always, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel or subscribe to the Spotify channel, as well as all of our social medias as well, please think about subscribing and check out all the socials as well. It's always great to get interaction with you guys as well, so please feel free to check those out. But from myself and Alan, we do hope you have a good one, and anyone that's going to the game on Wednesday, and if you're lucky enough to get a ticket for the derby on Sunday, I do hope you have a good one, and we will see you next time. You all take care. Bye for now.